What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. 2 down, 2 more to go. Happy divisional round. If you're a Commander fan, we just saw what feels like one of the bigger upsets in a long, long time. Close to a 10-point underdog. Rookie quarterback goes on the road, outplays Jared Goff, slices and dices the Lions and the #1 seed, 15-win team, a team that was in the NFC Championship game last year. I'd say they're headed home, but they're already at home. They're not working anymore. They're off. Devastating loss for the Lions. Incredible win for the Commies. We will dive into that game. So much going on. I mean, the first half was absolutely bananas, and the second half just unraveled on them. On the Lions, that is. The Commanders, man, if I would have told you last year at this time when you were drafted, we'll dive into it. We'll dive into it. And the first game, listen, they've won enough Super Bowls where it's hard to act like, they got lucky. But there was some officiating in that game, which was pretty head scratching. Demeco, who had the boys ready, also did some head scratching things. But the Chiefs are headed to their 7th straight NFC or AFC championship game. They will obviously host the winner of the heavyweight fight tomorrow, the Bills and the Ravens. But a lot going on there. Travis Kelce, every time there's a big game, the man proves that he's still got a little bit left. And his lady and Caitlin Clark watched the game together. Also, a lot going on the coaching front. There was a story this morning. What did I say? The Bears should try to trade for Mike Tomlin. And they fucking did it. But they got an answer that they probably didn't want to hear. Some stuff Schefter said, Jeff Ulbrich, some news on him. So we'll dive in. There's a lot going on. Yes, football weekend. Wow, I feel like I'm a little shell-shocked. Let's start with this game. And I've been thinking about, as it was like, well, the Lions are going to lose. And it's like, well, what are we going to lead the show with? What's the headline of this game? And I think big picture, and this is what makes sports so cool, is like, if this is a movie, you'd go, well, last year they got to the brink and they lost to the Niners. This year they win 15 games. They, honestly, with the Commanders forever. But unlike the Commanders, they didn't get a new owner. The Ford family still owns the squad. But they did hire the right people. And it was like, this is going to be their year. I don't know if they were going to win the Super Bowl, but the Lions are going to go to the Super Bowl. The Detroit Lions are going to go to the Super Bowl. But this isn't a movie. And there isn't a happy ending. This isn't Rudy coming off the edge and getting a sack. Or remember the Titans winning the last game. This is sports. This isn't reality TV. Even as much as people that watch Chiefs games think it is. This is not scripted. Anything can happen on any given moment. And tonight the Lions imploded. Jared Goff threw multiple interceptions. One that scored a touchdown for the Commanders. Another one that was caught in the end zone. He also had a fumble. Their wide receiver threw an interception, which was honestly the back-breaking play of the game. But if I told you that the Commanders would average well over 6 yards a play and that the Lions would throw 3 interceptions and lose a fumble, there's just no way you can win. And this was the question mark before the Vikings game where you went, listen, man, is their defense going to be good enough? Is their defense going to be good enough? And you saw tonight, it simply was not. But in games like this, your offense has to be perfect. You might have to score 40-plus points. But their offense wasn't perfect. Jared Goff imploded and played one of the worst games I can remember him having in years, in a spot where clearly they could not afford to have him do that. And then because, his play was all over the map, it felt like Ben Johnson, I don't know, got a little cute. I don't know if he was showing off for Tom Brady, hoping there'd be a 60, $70 million offer on the table for his services tomorrow from the Raiders, or it's just what he does. Because in fairness to him, they run a lot of trick plays. But when you're in a position and you're down, by 10 points and you got the ball and it's in the second half, I'm not sure a double pass is the right play because when you do that stuff, I would say typically, no matter what you coach the wide receiver to do, if he's not open, eat it. If he's not open, throw it away. I think that gets coached into those players all the time. But what usually happens? The skill guy wants to make a play. He wants to throw the ball. And he threw it right to the DB. And it essentially ended the game right there. But this game isn't that complicated. I do this a lot as well. We crush coaches for being cliche, for being just the coach speak answers in these press conferences. But there is a reason you hear over and over and over again, we cannot lose the turnover battle. We cannot lose the turnover battle. They have been saying it since the history of the sport because it usually kills you. Now, there are moments in certain games where you can get away from it. You cannot avoid it in playoff games because you're not only playing the best teams, you're typically playing the best quarterbacks. And we'll get into Jayden. It turns out he looks like a fucking Hall of Famer. But when you turn the ball over that many times, you got no shot. And then when you factor in your defense is awful. I mean, Amik Robinson, who had been playing really, really well for him, 2 weeks ago against the Vikings, did an excellent job against Justin Jefferson. I think he got a game ball, right? And he has played really, really well for them this season. Shattered his arm early in that game. You're like, they cannot overcome this. They were already at a tipping point of this is a law of diminishing returns, and we are well past it. And then Jared Goff starts throwing to the other team. You're like, listen, I didn't expect a rookie quarterback to be as good as he was. But if I told you to begin the game that I'm not even going to count the last interception, but he would throw a pick six, he would throw another pick in the end zone, and he would have a fumble. So he'd have 3 turnovers. They're not going to win like that. They can't win like that. We saw them in a game late in the season against the 49ers on that Monday night. And it was the same situation. Touchdown, 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 touchdown. No one was punting. The only way you're going to lose in games like that is turning the ball over. Why'd the Niners lose? Purdy threw a couple interceptions. And to me, that's 100% the difference in the game. And obviously, the Lions' defense was atrocious tonight. They could not stop a soul. Beside the one play where I don't know if it's like a tush-push quarterback sneak with 3 options, or Mariota just tried to ad-lib. I kind of hope he tried to ad-lib. But if he was looking to pitch it to Jayden, who was in the shotgun, I think it might have been an option. My guess is, and listen, you probably hear, they might talk about it in the press conferences, is that it's an option play. He can either go for it if he sees a lane or flip it to Jayden. But when that play happened, you're like, hey, Dan is kind of, Dan Quinn, like Dan Campbell, they will go for it relentlessly. And then as the game went on, every single 4th and short, and they were always in 4th and short. They were in 4th and 6s. They were in 4th and 2s, 4th and 1s, 4th and 3s. They were automatic. You never had one thought in the back of your head. And by the second one, if you were a Commander fan, you're like, we're getting these. There is no way they're going to stop us. We can do a quarterback play action run, first down. We can have Jayden drop back, hit Zach Ertz, hit Terry McLaurin, run for it, do whatever. We are going to get this first down, and it just kept happening and happening and happening. And there was a drive. They had long drives. They had long drives of 10 plus plays, 6, 7 minutes. It's like you just can't afford. There is, in football, when they are running the ball down your throat, And tonight it felt like how many yards did the commies run for? 183 yards. 183 yards. So you have I'm not going to count the last turnover, but two picks and a fumble, and they're running for 180 plus yards, and they're controlling the clock 33 to 26. That's hard, man. That is really, really hard to overcome, especially when you factor in, I mean, obviously their quarterback was a huge running threat, but that's a big kick in the nuts if you're the Lions. Because as Schefter said, I think he said it multiple times this week. He reiterated it when I saw him say it this morning. These two guys are getting jobs. We don't know exactly where Ben Johnson's going. Is he going to end up with the Bears? Schefter made it seem like don't discount the Jags. Obviously, the Raiders are all in trying to get him. Ben Johnson is gone. And by all accounts, Aaron Glenn is gone as well. And sometimes, and listen, a couple years ago when the uh, the Chargers couldn't stop a soul in the second half of that game to the Jags, that was on Brandon Staley. His guys had no fucking clue where to go. I remember it was blown coverage after blown coverage after blown coverage. It's like these defensive players have absolutely no clue what he's calling. Tonight, like, guys are close, guys are there, they're just not good enough. And this is what happens when you get the attrition of the amount of injuries they had. Aaron Glenn is clearly an excellent defensive coordinator. In his style, because they're so undermanned, he had to be really aggressive. And there were countless times when the game was like 7 to 10 points. So the Commanders hadn't taken off, where he's blitzing guys off the right side. And because Jayden is such a great athlete, he was just able to run away. And he made so many plays tonight with his feet that weren't just quote unquote designed runs. It was Lamar-ish. They're like, yeah, nothing's here, nothing's here. I'm out. I'm going to gain 6 yards. I'm going to gain 8 yards. I'm going to gain 10 yards. I'm going to keep these, move the chains. Let's keep rolling. And there's nothing you can do about it. That's tough. That's tough. And I think if you're a Lions fan, for as awesome as this is for the Commanders fans, and it should just be an incredible moment. This, you just won your 14th game this season. You're in the NFC Championship game for the first time since 1991. And no one saw this coming. At this time last year, they had the number 2 overall pick in the draft. I'm not even sure as of January 18th, was Dan Quinn officially their hire? Maybe Adam Peters had been hired, and I'm not sure. I'd have to Google when they even hired the guys. I'd say there's a 50-50 chance that neither guy was even hired at this point in time. And if one was, it was probably Adam. But I think the Lions' loss is worse than their great win because, like, this is the first time that Washington has made the NFC Championship game since 1991. 1991. I'm 40 years old. In 1991, I was 7. That is a long time ago. But remember, last year was the first time that I think it was the first time ever the Detroit Lions won multiple playoff games. It was the first time, I think, since 1991, also, because they played Washington in the game. So you were looking at two franchises that hadn't sniffed success in so long, but the difference is Detroit, the expectations were there this year because they were in the game last season. At this point in time last year, they were headed to the NFC Championship game. This was going to be their year. Their coaching staff had been there forever. They have 3 head coaches on their fucking staff. Dan Quinn, Ben Johnson, and Aaron Glenn. They have an all-star lineup on offense. So even if their defense sucks, we are going to score on every drive. And you notice the first drive of the game, it's like they had to punt. You're like, that's a little weird. That's a little weird. And let's face it, it was just off. And by the time they had to call that double pass, from Jameson Williams, it almost felt like Ben Johnson had lost his confidence in Jared Goff. They can say whatever they want, but I never judge a human being on their words. Words to me don't mean shit. I judge you on your actions. And his actions calling that play in that spot was like, and listen, I get they like trick plays, but was kind of a direct reflection of Goff, and it felt like they had kind of jumped off his bandwagon, which to me is crazy because he had given you 3 years of playing at a really high level. And it's the opposite with Washington. They treat Jayden Daniels, who I saw Jim Rome tweet this out. He thought that Jayden Daniels is the greatest rookie quarterback he'd ever seen. He's got to be on the short list. And when you factor in that most rookie quarterbacks that go on to have all-time great careers. I mean, when you think of the great quarterbacks in the NFL, Tom Brady did not play as a rookie. Peyton Manning was terrible as a rookie. John Elway, Joe Montana, Dan Marino, I can't speak to their rookie years. Brett Favre was a backup in Atlanta as a rookie. Steve Young uh, was on Tampa Bay. It did not go well. Aaron Rodgers was sitting, right? Patrick Mahomes did not play as a rookie beside the last game of the season in Denver. I, he's just Josh Allen wasn't good as a rookie. Lamar was good, but didn't start the whole time. It's just Joe Burrow shattered his leg. Justin Herbert had a really good rookie season, but his team didn't make the playoffs. So I think when you look, Roethlisberger's team went far as a rookie, but he wasn't that good, and their team was built about avoiding him. Dak Prescott had a really good season as a rookie, but they lost in this round. So pretty special shit, man. These guys changed the franchise overnight. Changed Washington overnight. Think how insane that is. This franchise, like the Lions, this is what we said last year, what they accomplished. Like, that's insane. You did that to the Lions. What they did with this team, and it's really because of Jayden Daniels. I don't think their defense is that good. Like, in 2 years, how many guys on this defense are going to be starting for that defense? The corner from Michigan, maybe a D lineman, a couple of DBs, maybe. This isn't like it's insane. Now, McLaurin's an excellent player. The touchdown he had tonight was badass. Terry McLaurin is a stud. But, that kind of got a running back group by committee. Eckler's a good little change of pace scat back. Uh, McNichols, Adam Peters loves that guy. Brian Robinson, I'm a fan of, but he clearly fell out of favor, though he had a touchdown tonight. Uh, Ertz is my age. So it's insane that they are in the NFC Championship game with this roster. And it's simple, like quarterback. There's going to be a lot of talk about, and Caleb, I saw today, he was at like a USC game. He's got a cast on his arm. It's because like he removed a cyst or something. I mean, the chances that in 5 years Caleb Williams has two playoff victories, like what he's already just accomplished immediately as a rookie, is pretty insane. Like the lead he has on his draft class, and it's obviously he's a special athlete and he's got a big arm, but when you watch him play quarterback, you're like, he is a running quarterback, but he doesn't really play like a running quarterback on so many pass plays where he just sits in the pocket like a true pocket guy and throws these absolute seeds and darts right over the middle of the field, hitting guys in stride on like third and long or second and long or fourth and four. It's like, how calm, cool, and collected is this guy? It's amazing to watch. As just a fan of football, it is insane how calm this guy is in these moments. He's on the road in Detroit. I can't even imagine. I mean, right when he comes out for the first drive, he's going like this. He's trying to hear, and his team's not as talented as who he's playing. And it doesn't even matter. He was the best player on the field tonight by a country mile. Like, who would you even say was the second best player on the field? He was dominant. And clearly, and listen, It's a new school way of thinking, always going for it on fourth down. Now, granted, their kicker sucks. And one thing Brady mentioned in the second half, like you're playing with house money. Like, no, Tom, they have a 10-point lead in the second half of the second round of the playoffs. Yet most people probably thought they'd win 7, 8 games and be a successful season. But that's no longer house money. That is, we've taken like $1,000 to the blackjack table, and now we have 50K. So it's like, yeah, just if you blow a little bit, what? No, you had $50,000. You started with 1,000. Like, let's be smart about this. We want to go home with $50,000. If you want to bet a couple more K, okay, but at minimum, you're going home with like 47. You cannot lose this game. Going into this game, 100% you're playing with house money. The moment you have a 10-point lead at halftime and your quarterback looks like he's in a different universe than Jared Goff, you had to win it. And they did. And they dominated. And, you talk about a storybook kind of ending, and obviously their season's not over. I mean, they have going to have a legit chance to be in the Super Bowl. They are going to have to go on the road again, right? So tomorrow night, or I guess tomorrow day, afternoon, whoever wins that Rams-Eagles game is hosting the NFC Championship game. And I think if you're the Commanders, I think most people would say, oh, they'd rather play the Rams. I don't know. I mean, you're pretty comfortable playing the Eagles. Like, their schemes. You've coached against them twice. You watch cross tape so often throughout the season because of the division. There is just a huge, huge comfort level there. I think if you just polled the average NFL fan, they would say 100% the Rams. It's going to be hard regardless. And who knows? Like, could SoFi even host a game next week? They couldn't a week ago. Can they do it now? I mean, there's still fires ripping. Maybe they could. I don't know. We'll find out, I guess, if they win. But I don't think you'd be intimidated to play the Eagles, even though you would be a big underdog, because like we had talked about, the house money thing, you would have house money going into the game until you would be winning the game or something at halftime. And there's no longer house money. Then you're actually playing to go to the Super Bowl. This was the thing with the Lions last year. It was like when Dan Campbell went for it on fourth and whatever instead of kicking the field goal. It's like, Dan, this is no longer house money. This is a game to go to the Super Bowl. If you kick this field goal, you will be up 17 points. Last time I checked, that takes 3 offensive drives to get 17 plus points. They can't tie the game with 2 drives. You have a huge advantage, and last year kind of bit him in the ass. So you could argue, looking at Dan Campbell, like, yeah, this sucked. I can't even imagine being in that Lions locker room. I can't even imagine being Dan Campbell knowing you're going to lose your 2 coaches. But you could argue, looking back on last year, the opportunity was there to put a knife in the throat of the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know if you've watched that Cowboy and Indian show that Tim Riggins from Friday Night Lights plays this dude who's taking this chick across the country. It's basically like John Wick meets the 1850s. It's incredible. People just get killed like every 5 minutes. But sometimes you got to go for the kill shot. And tonight I felt like every time the Commanders never relented. But end of the game, it's like, okay, and it's different scenario. It's not apples to apples. Like, no, we got to kick a field goal here. We're not going for it. We're going up 17. And now he missed the field goal, but that was 100% the right move. It would end the game. Like, yeah, this thing, there is absolutely no shot. So what a moment. And this is why we like sports and football, because you never know. Stuckey and I talked about it, and he was really hammering this home. He's like, this weekend gets weird. This weekend gets weird. NFL playoffs. We're talking about the NFL playoffs. You bet we are. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Scoring touchdowns is a key to winning in the NFL playoffs. And the key to you scoring big is betting on them at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something as simple like a player to score a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Here's another reason to watch your favorite players crush it in the playoffs. New customers bet $5 to get 200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big during the NFL playoffs with the DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use the code JOHN, J-O-H-N. That's code JOHN for new customers to get 200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. And speaking of weird, the Chiefs are headed back to the AFC Championship game, 7th straight year. I do think the headline of this game, and listen, it's not like the Texans deserve to win the game. There were 3 calls, definitely 2, and another moment that were pretty outrageous. Now, I am all for protecting quarterbacks. They carry the league in terms of entertainment. At least the good quarterbacks. I don't give a shit about the bottom 15. Those guys should not get flags. No one would care. When they miss games, no one misses them. But all the Pro Bowl, high-end guys, all for protecting them. All for it. I am for Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jayden Daniels, Jared Goff being in the game. I mean, tonight for a split second when Jared Goff got rocked and didn't get a penalty, and you thought, if that was Patrick Mahomes, they would have thrown 3 flags, and it would have been a 100-yard penalty, but he didn't get anything. You thought he got a concussion, he was going to be out, and they were going to have to play with Teddy Bridgewater, who was literally coaching high school football like 3 weeks ago. I think he won Miami State Championship. Kind of crazy that he was even the backup. Pretty questionable indictment on Hendon Hooker, who I said if Ben Johnson gets a job, he should take him with him, but that's a conversation for another day. So I'm all for protecting the quarterbacks. But there were 2 moments today that I think we've jumped the shark, and people push back on this about the Chiefs, that the refs and the league are in the tank for the Chiefs. Now, one thing that is not debatable, the Chiefs are the #1 rated team in the NFL. I read an article like halfway through the season. They were rating higher this year than the Cowboys. They are doing astronomical numbers when they're on television. They have the current most famous player in the league in Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, their second most famous player is dating one of the most famous human beings on the planet. They are a ratings bonanza. And when I was a kid, the Sacramento Kings couldn't beat the Lakers. And then it came out later that one of the referees was working for the mob and helped the Lakers make it to the NBA Finals. And there were always rumors about how David Stern wanted to fuck the smaller markets to make sure the Lakers were in the primetime games. Now, from a business perspective, if I was David Stern, I would have done the same thing because it was better for business if the Lakers were in the NBA Finals than the Sacramento Kings. But I hate the fucking Lakers. I wanted the Kings to win. And I remember that infuriated me. And as I got older and you find out the details, you're like, they never had a shot. Made you even more mad. But then you get even older and you realize, well, from a business perspective, totally get it. It's about moving the needle. And I think most people think that the Chiefs are these games are rigged. And I think they watched today, and that's going to be a huge conversation for people that aren't Chiefs fans. Here's what I do know. It is great for business when people hate you. You either want them to hate you or love you. You want nobody in the middle. You want no apathy. That's bad for business. And the one thing the Chiefs do right now is they create emotion. The Lakers have done this forever, and the Yankees do this, and the Cowboys started to diminish. They used to do it a lot more. But when I say the Kansas City Chiefs, I evoke some sort of emotion into a football fan. And there's a lot of hatred and people rooting against them right now. That's a good thing for the business of the NFL. Do I think that they told the referees to make sure to call plays or call fouls when guys get close to Patrick Mahomes? I don't necessarily think they do that. I do think these referees, when they officiate Patrick Mahomes, are just basically officiating scared and are so quick to throw the flag. Will Anderson did not touch his helmet. It should not have been a 15-yard penalty. The second one, the 2 Texans players, helmet to helmet, each other. Patrick Mahomes didn't even get touched. But to me, the most egregious thing today, and this is where the NFL needs to step in, and Patrick Mahomes has been doing this for years, is when he went to the sideline and he was running to get out of bounds, and then he stopped. He's manipulating the rules. He has turned into Chris Paul, James Harden when it comes to getting fouls on the sideline. And he got shoved. Now, they ended up not throwing a flag, thank God, but he's too great of a player and too important to the league to be doing that stuff. The league does need to step in and end that right now. And honestly, I'd have no problem if you do that. That's a 15-yard penalty on the offense. That cannot happen. But I'm also not going to sit here and act like, you know what? The Texans should have won the game. It was their game to win. Demeco is a great coach. And I saw a headline today from Rap Sheet about Robert Saleh, who somehow is getting a million interviews. Like, guys, I like Robert Saleh. I root for my bald brother. I'd hire him as my defensive coordinator. He was a fucking terrible head coach. I mean, completely over his head as a head coach. Interviewing him as a head coach to me seems insane. But Rap Sheet basically said is like, no wonder everyone's interviewing Saleh. He was once Demeco's mentor, and Demeco says that he learned everything from him. And I think there's some truth to that. He was a mentor to Demeco Ryans as a younger coach. But there is not one team in the NFL who would hire Robert Saleh over Demeco Ryans. Obviously, as a head coach, let alone a defensive coordinator. Demeco's really good. I think Demeco is easily, I think we saw two of, I don't know, top two or three defensive coaches in the league in Spags and Demeco going at it in that game. Demeco is an elite defensive coach, and he had the boys ready. Now, they have a lot of talent, and their front, obviously the Chiefs' offensive line can be a little iffy, was dominating the line of scrimmage. Early on, Patrick was running around for his life. But there were two moments in that game that just made me go, Demeco, this cannot happen. One, early in the game, he kicked a field goal into the wind, which did not even have a chance. If it was a golf hole, the ball would be out of bounds. It was really, really bad. It was a 55-yard field goal. You can't do that in a field position game against the Kansas City Chiefs. And then late in the game, it was 20-12, and as Aikman is screaming at the television, I guess he's on television. He's screaming through the television, call timeout. I don't like this. Call timeout. And he didn't, and it probably should have been a delay of game, and the play got all messed up, and it wasn't even close. I got no problem necessarily going for it, and I have a rule of thumb. I'm not a big call timeout guy in the second half for a delay of game, but this is the playoffs. And that play was essentially your season. So you either got to take the delay of game and then choose to punt or call a timeout. And he did neither. So, like, situational awareness and time management, which is something that Andy used to get crushed for, he's now elite at that. And Demeco, a young coach who is a stud. If, I saw Harbaugh say that Big Cat say, hey, anyone selling Justin Herbert stock, I will buy all of it. I will keep accumulating Demeco Ryan stock. He is an excellent young coach. If he was an offensive guy, we would talk about this guy. I mean, shit, everyone blows Kevin O'Connell. He's never won a playoff game. Demeco's won two in 2 years. So, and went toe to toe today with the champs. But you got to be better than that. And he said after the game, like, we knew coming into this game, everyone would be against us, i.e. the refs. And it was true. But that can't happen. That was a moment that just, you got to be better. Because in this game, like, you're outplaying them. You're at one point in time, I think they had 100 more yards of offense. They just look like the better team. And everyone's saying that. Well, that's great. But game's not like scored from the 20 to the 20 or on time of possession. There is a scoreboard. So when you don't have the lead and you're down in a game or losing in a game, especially in a playoff situation, no one cares that you're outplaying them. That sounds great. And that to me means stuff in the regular season because ultimately over the course of a month that will turn into wins. But this is not a 7-game series. This is a 60-minute game. So I can be outplaying my opponent all I want. If it's 13-3, who cares? Obviously their kicker melted down, missed the field goal into the wind. Then they come out of halftime, and this is Demeco shines again. Squad is ready. They have a long 15 play drive. Takes up 10 minutes on the clock. They got 5 first downs off third downs on this drive. Meant they were either in 3rd and 5, 3rd and 3, and they converted it 5 different times. Scored a touchdown to make it. It was going to be 13-13. Misses the kick, and then you're like, God, something's just off about the Texans. Something is just off. Now later, that's what happened with the when Patrick slid or whatever, and the two guys fly over him, and they call the penalty, which was egregious. It was, and there's no. I'm not going to argue around that, but I'm also not going to act like the Texans didn't screw themselves countless times throughout this game. But like this is what we thought about the Chiefs all season. And Mahomes was asked after the game, like, was this rust because you guys didn't play? And he said, no, they're a big time defense. And I don't think he's wrong. Will Anderson is a badass. Like you watch today, you're like, I get why Will Anderson went third overall last year. I get why Jayden Daniels went second overall this year. Shit, should have gone one. You watch Jahmyr Gibbs, you're like, no wonder the Lions drafted him in the top 15. That guy plays anytime, any day. Someone tweeted at me that he looked like what everyone thought Reggie Bush coming out of USC was actually going to look like in the NFL. That's Jahmyr Gibbs. I was like, yeah, that's a pretty good one. So the high end talent on the Texans, and I said this coming into the game, like, listen, they have some flaws. Their offensive line is a major question mark. And you saw today the Chiefs have, I don't know if it was the first or second sack. I mean, he was sacked. How many times was CJ sacked today? Uh, 8. Sacked 8 times. 8 sacks. I'm sorry, that just can't happen. One happened when they moved Chris Jones out to defensive end over the right tackle, and he smoked him for a sack. George Karlaftis, who is just a good, high energy, just a really good starter, was just all over his ass all game long. I think he ended the game with 3 sacks. You cannot win a playoff game against the Kansas City Chiefs when you get a couple bad calls go your way, when your quarterback gets sacked 8 times. It just can't happen, especially when you're running the ball pretty well. The Texans ran for 150 yards. Mixon's averaging 5 yards a carry. But what happened today? It's like he's washed, he's washed, he's washed. Like, just wait for the playoffs. Wait for the playoffs. And he's not as fast as he used to be. It was evident on his big, how long was his big play? 49 yards. He probably scores on that 5 years ago. He might score on that 3 years ago. His speed, if it was once for a tight end, like a 9 out of 10, it's probably like a 6.5 now. But his instincts in space, when you get 87 the ball, to make a guy miss, to break an arm tackle, you can't teach what he brings to the table. And the other thing, and this is where Chris Jones, Karlaftis now is, I mean, this is Karlaftis' 3rd year. All George knows is Super Bowls and being 1 seeds and kicking the shit out of everybody. That's all these guys know. So you are playing people that have just unlimited playoff experience at the highest level. And no one has more than Patrick and Travis. So when you get those guys in big spots, and what basically was the game-winning score when Travis or when Patrick's about to get sacked, goes down on his knees and throws the ball to Kelce. And people go like, how does he always get open? Why can no one cover him? Because they're not like running specific routes. He's not, this is going to be a 5-yard curl. This is going to be like a 7-yard in route. This is going to be, he just freelances based on what you do. So if you have zone concepts, he is just going to find the opening and sit in it. And Patrick knows exactly where he's going to go. So when you're at practice and these guys are hammering home like, hey, this is where they like to go against these defenses. This is where he likes to go. You have no clue. You could think he might sit there if you're sitting as an underneath, middle of the field spot dropper as a linebacker. But if you're cheating the wrong way, he'll go the other way. They're not running. It's like basketball. It's like a fluid situation where you watch the Lions, like everyone's running specific plays. right? Like this guy's doing this guy's doing that, and the other guy's doing that. Like Travis just running a route out into the middle of the field, and he's going to find the empty grass. So if you're cheating to the left, if you're cheating to the right, he's going to go the opposite way. And he does it over and over and over again in all these big games. Because think about the heightened intensity of a playoff game. You're extra focused. All these linebackers do your assignment. Don't fuck up. This is where I got to be. These are my keys. This is what I'm looking for. And you're just playing high level football. And then you're basically playing checkers and he's playing chess. What did he do today? 7 catches for 117 and a touchdown. I think they said on the broadcast his ninth game with over 100 yards. And, the Chiefs have a huge advantage that they get basically a 24-hour rest before the other team plays. And then whoever wins that game, if it's Baltimore, they got to fly home. And then they got to fly again to Kansas City. And if it's Buffalo, they just have a long travel. Now, I think, it's going to feel like more than likely, we'll see how the Eagles look, that the Super Bowl will be played in the AFC. Obviously, the Eagles to me are probably the team that could beat one of those three teams. I have a hard time. I'm not trying to burst anyone's bubble, but could I see the Commanders beating the Chiefs, Ravens, or Bills? Could I see the Rams beating one of those teams? I can't. I could see the Eagles if Jalen's playing good, but if Jalen's playing bad and AJ's reading, the inner game of tennis or whatever the fuck he's reading, no chance. Uh, so yeah, man, Lions lose, commies first time since '91, and the Chiefs seventh championship game since 2019. So it shows you how polar opposite the Chiefs are to like the commies. Commies like, yeah, we haven't been in this game since 1991. Patrick was like, yeah, I was there last year. Then I was there the year before, then the year before, and then the year before that, and I think the year before that, and the year before that. I guess we could end on this. I was hoping that the Bears would do what was reported that they did, and honestly, the more I thought about it, it's like, of course, they would not be doing their job if they didn't call the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think there's two. It's like a double-edged sword here with Mike Tomlin. On one side, I really respect him because in a business where it's a shady business, from the teams, from the coaches and their agents, you do whatever you can to survive and make sure you get as much money as possible for as long as possible. So if you were just looking at, like, I think now we have to acknowledge, as long as he has a winning season, regardless how it ends, he's just going to keep his job in perpetuity. Maybe if he ever had like a 4-win season, anything would be on the table. But as long as his team's winning 9+ games, Mike Tomlin's not going to get fired. But there has to be an element of, most coaches, I think, would do this. Like, you know what? I don't really think I can win here. I am going to jump to the Bears, where they do have a young quarterback, assuming he likes him. Maybe he doesn't, and go, hey, sign me to a 5-year contract for $60-70 million, and I just got a better chance to win. Maybe he doesn't think that. But there is a loyalty that he shows to the Pittsburgh Steelers from, one, he never even leaks out. And I think a lot of coaches would, given his situation that's just kind of going nowhere and everyone shitting on him, that, like, Tomlin's ready to sniff around. Like, Tomlin is a really, really loyal guy. There are elements to coaching of like used car salesmen and like snake oil salesmen, not necessarily to their players, but when it comes to their contract, when it comes to, trying to put themselves in the best situation to win. And Tomlin's just pretty old school in the sense that, like, doesn't do any of that. Comes out after the season. They try to ask him about the situation. Would he go anywhere else? He's basically like, don't waste your time. And he's been saying this for years. And finally, someone does get aggressive and reach out, and they immediately shoot it down. So maybe the Steelers are the most loyal franchise in all of sports. Mike Tomlin's pretty loyal too. And it's like a two-way street. Sometimes, and I'm sure we've all experienced this in life, whether with a personal relationship, with a professional relationship, one side can be a lot more loyal than the other side. Whether it's a business partner, whether it's an employee and a boss, whether it's a boyfriend and girlfriend, a husband and wife, this feels like they're very connected at the hip. There is extreme loyalty between the two. And I think it's time for a change. If I was Mike, I'd probably be ready for a time for a change. But like maybe he goes, why would I want to coach the fucking Chicago Bears? I coach the Pittsburgh Steelers. I would rather try to figure it out here without a quarterback than, and again, there is no guarantee he thinks Caleb Williams any good. Because you're watching Jayden Daniels tonight, like Caleb got a long way to go before he ever looks half as good as that. So maybe he doesn't even want to risk it. He goes, what the hell's the difference? I'd rather have nothing than be tied to this guy where all the pressure is going to be. What if he's not good? It'll make me look like an idiot. But there is a, I just think most guys would at least put it out there. And he doesn't at all. We've seen Sean Payton do that, the way he kind of wiggled his way out. We've seen a lot of coaches do this, kind of entertain other jobs, get raises. Andy Reid's done it over the years. Not just even floating to retirement. That's the business they're in. They should. I'm talking like McVay. It's like floating Amazon to get a raise. Happens all the time. You're not even a bad guy if you do it. It's just part of the business. It's part of you have to have a little of that to you to maximize your money. And Tomlin, I don't know if it goes back to when he originally got hired and no one thought that no one even knew who Mike Tomlin was and they took a chance on him. A couple years later, he wins a Super Bowl. He's made a shitload of money there. If you watch Hard Knocks, his wife's got the little boutique in town. Like, they're living well. But there is just an extreme two-way loyalty there that I just don't think exists in the NFL. Honestly. I mean, hell, there were rumors about John Harbaugh getting fired like right the year before Lamar got there. It's like, I think they're going to fire John Harbaugh. Never even comes up with Mike Tomlin. So congrats to the Steelers. Mike Tomlin's not going anywhere.